cakes are like Karen bringing us across the river Styx. Every year closer to death.
Už tam je hodně.
Jo, pěkný. Vypadá to trošku jako zbytov, ale...
No, pojď sem, který tady nemáš pejít, nevím, no.
Krásně. Děkuji.
Mnoga věta, živio, živio.
I've just turned 33 and I'm used to energetically managing everything at once. Children, lovers, the household, my film crews, all kinds of things. Getting pregnant a third time might not have been the best idea. I don't have the same kind of energy I did during my first pregnancy. Or the second one. Now, out of the blue, I feel exhausted. Today, I'm taking a standard glucose tolerance test, which means downing 100 grams of sugar.
Takže paní Culková, já vám nesu tady půl litřík, máte 5 minut na vypití, poté se budete hlídat přesně 55 minut, přijdete na první odběr, za dalších 55 minut na druhý odběr. Pořádně si to promíchejte, abyste měla rozpuštěný ten cukr celý, moc se nepohybovat, protože jsou potom zkreslené výsledky. Tak, zacvičte si.
I'm diagnosed with gestational diabetes. My baby and I, we are in danger.
Konečná fáze je takto, že to bude mít zase zavření, už máme vevnitř jehlu.
Cukrovka se má tendenci během toho těhotenství dál zhoršovat u většiny žen.
My body's never betrayed me, whether I've danced all night, stressed all day, breastfed for years. Now I'm going to have to control my sugar levels, and they assure me I'll have insulin if it gets worse.
Máma tam není. Je to
Mira takes over looking after the family. I'm completely out of order. My weakness annoys me. I need more energy. A bit of sugar would be just the thing. But sugar is supposed to be my enemy. Why sugar of all things? I just don't see it. I grew up in a communist country where sugar was glorified like white gold. It's thanks to a series of Czech inventions that sugar refinement works the way it does today all around the world. My uncle's always proud to point out that he's worked in 7 sugar refineries.
Já jsem pracoval v cukrovarech 16 let a za tu dobu jsem vyrobil cukru, že by se jim zaplnila celá tahleta ulice.
No, dort bez cukru nejde.
For decades, our family gatherings have been defined by cake. My mother reassures me that only retirees get diabetes. If that's true, I must be 150 now. I feel bad. I actually start researching what diabetes is and what it means for pregnant me. Macrosomic or big baby syndrome is just one of the problems that comes with gestational diabetes. When I think about it, sugar's been an issue since my childhood. My grandmother suffered from diabetes. She couldn't even walk because of a hideous diabetic foot. Our family completely failed to take proper care of her. They put her in hospital, where she didn't last long. And her death ruined relations in the family. Granddad didn't last long after that. He hanged himself somewhere around here. The Czech Republic is still one of sugar's biggest fans. If you want to hear the other side of the story, you have to go deep into a forest.
Já budu působit takhle silou a vy budete co nejvíc klást odpor. Jste připraven se šiškou?
Ano.
Tak pozor, jdem.
Jednou ještě jednou.
Tak,
To snad není
to si
možné.
tady to druhou ručičkou, druhou. Tak. A cítíš ten rozdíl?
Aha.
Sila pryč?
Okay.
Tak vidíš, pro tebe je to ponaučení, že když budeš přijímat takovýhle cukr, tak nebudeš mít sílu, budeš mít oslabený organismus. Přesvědčilo tě to?
I'm confused. The shaman is the only one who sees a clear connection between my diet and my shitty health. When my mother was pregnant with me, all she ate was noodles sprinkled with sugar and poppy seeds. 9 months of it. I don't know if that's just proof that some babies can survive anything, or whether I should blame her for my diabetes. My second child was born with one ear undeveloped. And I still feel guilty for it. No, I don't want to welcome another health problem into the family. I need a real expert to talk to. First of all, I want to see if there really could be some link between diabetes and refined sugar. Most diabetologists, it seems, don't see a connection.
In the sugar roller coaster, you eat sugar because in the sugar is glucose increases, is going to produce blood hyperglycemia. So what happens is the insulin will take the glucose and move it to fat and muscle. This will produce hypoglycemia, low blood sugar levels. You then need more sugar and you eat again. You're eating not because you're naturally hungry, is a psychological need with a bunch of physiological effects that are moving this person through this sort of endless cycle. Over a long term, what happens? Type 2 diabetes.
The expressive professor describes how his own type 2 diabetes came about. Maybe that's why he talks to me so loudly. Rodents choose the sweeter food every time. It doesn't depend on taste. Sweetness leads their decision.
Pregnant lady can look into a crystal ball. She can see risks because of conditions that develop during pregnancy, such as high blood pressure, such as kidney disease, such as gestational diabetes, which reveals the risk of the future. We do not have widespread mutation of a gene that's associated with obesity and diabetes. That's not the story. The story is a change in diet habits. For the first time in history, life expectancy for newborns and for grown-ups is diminishing. And that's because of the changes that have happened in the last 30 years. Because of sugar. Because of sugar.
The internet is full of declarations that there is no connection between sugar and ADHD. Yoko Nomura determinedly says the opposite.
When baby is born, we don't really know what it is because baby doesn't really have to do a complicated task like tying shoes or riding a bike or multiplying numbers and all that. But when they reach the preschool age, we started realizing something is really strange. The baby tend to be hyperactive, baby tend to not to be sustained attention. It's just different. Doesn't really necessarily have to do ADHD. It can be any sort of neurological disorders. There will be a connection with schizophrenia later in life, perhaps Alzheimer's disease. Even if names are different, it's just about brain.
Happy Easter, Lady Gaga in the house.
Yoko Nomura recommended that I meet microbiologist Dr. Brian Hu. He has evidence of how our immune system is affected by diet.
Just drink soda one day, that's fine. But if you keep doing that for a long time, you will see that your microbiome is completely different from the people who don't have this habit. I think a healthy diet during the pregnancy would change the mom's microbiota. The effect in baby's microbiota would increase the risk of developing certain neuron disease, like say autism, ADHD, Parkinson's disease, asthma, inflammatory bowel disease, all kinds of diseases that associate to the dysregulated immune system.
What advice do you usually give to a pregnant lady who might be developing gestational diabetes?
Well, it's important to stick to a regimen of whole food, natural, without a lot of refined sugars, avoiding candy, ice cream, packaged products, potato chips, anything that is not from the ground. Oh, good, baby. There are foods that have natural sugars, and those are appropriate for a pregnant woman in moderation as well, such as certain fruits and vegetables, keeping to whole grains, not having white rice or carbohydrates, pasta, that sort of stuff, and limiting that as much as you can.
You and your babies are connected by umbilical cord, and placenta is the one which is protecting your baby. But glucose goes through placenta. Glucose is sugar, right? Mm-hmm. So if you take a lot of sugar, it just all gone to your baby. And some people good for the baby though? Sugar? I mean, you want to have a baby who is humongous like a bear? Doesn't it help them grow? No, it's not good. They are not going to be able to use the energy which could have been used for brain development or skin development or somewhere else. Everything is just poured toward pancreas functioning so that they will be able to reduce the sugar level. And baby is like a captive audience. They can't really do anything. Whatever mother does, baby get it.
I try to clear all the sugar out of our house, but suddenly I realize I don't know how to shop, how to eat, or how to cook without sugar. How can somebody live the good life without that white powder when we can't figure out how to survive 1 week? It's even harder for my partner. He doesn't have the added motivation of a baby in his belly. He has doubts but supports me in my journey.
When I met my wife, the family doctors told her mother that she shouldn't marry in that time. Meaning was not to catch children because she was a chronically constitutional weak. So we stopped all kind of animal food and sugar and refined foods. And she, within a couple of weeks, she totally recovered. And then 2 years later, she became pregnant and gave birth to a very healthy child. We are sugar-free.
Thank you.
We are sugar-free, very healthy, happy family. But it asks daily attention to keep it high, on a high level.
What is the best source of sugar?
Whole grains is a 60-70% complex sugar. This is the best source. Fruits and vegetables, mainly sugar. My wife and me, we started in 1968, natural food company, but it was a very tiny shop with like 50 products, and nobody came in. So most of the time we were doing nothing or talking or reading, studying. In that time, we were trying to find all kinds of solutions for our taste, so we developed many natural sweeteners. Or also, I was hooked on bread. So I started first sourdough bakery in Holland. In Japan, I learned how to make tofu, so I started first tofu factory. Now, when people saw me doing, same as sourdough, what are you doing? Do you think that will sell? I said, in 25 years, it will sold in all supermarkets. What's happening now? What is called health food is now so mainstream that the multinationals want to take advantage of that too. But they don't care what they sell, healthy, as long you can sell the image of healthy. So in natural food shops today, 80% is health food junk. And they put organic sugar in products. Then you get organic allergies. Then you get organic ADHD. And you get organic spaced out kids.
I'm no bio woman, nor am I your typical housewife. But here I am now, preserving all the naturally sweet fruit from our garden. I'm making plum jam when I go into labor. Velen. Velen, no. Is it a kluk?
Is kluk? Velen, cos'è state? Ciao. Ahoj. Táta má kameru.
Nechce. It's a huge relief my son has all his body parts. But he has the diabetes gene. What about the parts of him we can't see? What about his mind? Ne, nemaluj na něj.
Nevadí? Já to umeju, jo?
Utíkej.
Takže cukr, ty věci máme, který nejím. Cukr, sůl, kávu.
My daughter is explaining what they're teaching her in school. Her first written words are sugar, soda, and lollipop. The name of the chapter? Things my mother usually buys. Velen has a bad case of neonatal jaundice, as babies of diabetic mothers usually do. He's too sleepy for breastfeeding. I get nervous. Despite what I know about sugar now, we still have moments of weakness. How can it be so hard? I managed to give up smoking, but with sugar it's awfully tough.
This is not a book. This is the Bible. And this Bible, Sugar Blues, changed my life over 30 years ago. Somebody should take this and do a screenplay and somehow figure out to do a movie. Seriously.
Huh? We'll try.
Oh, okay.
Like some sparkles?
Okay, but I have to tell you what they're for. When you wear sparkles, that means that you're going to drink water and not drink so much soda. Are you guys cool with that? Are you up for being healthy and drinking water and eating lots of vegetables? And this makes the statement that you try new things, okay?
I didn't want to wear this.
Well, you can always change your mind in life. The 60s, kids left their homes from all over America. I lived between New York and Los Angeles, and I became the head dancer at the Whiskey A-Go-Go, where the Doors were the house band, and Jimi Hendrix played on a regular basis. Jimmy was actually living with a very good friend of mine when he passed on. It was literally drugs, sex, and rock and roll, and it really was. Most of my friends from back then died. 2 of my best girlfriends died in my home. My boyfriend of the time, we lived together for 5 years. He died, his partner died. Everybody started dying around the same time that Jimi Hendrix did. Keith Moon from The Who was a big buddy of mine. Energy up! Woo! Well, very proud of you guys. Thank you for chatting with us. Bye-bye. Approximately 35 years ago, when I got sober from drugs and alcohol, I noticed that when I ate processed foods, sugar specifically, my brain was exactly like a drug. The behavior was the same. I think the reason that people don't believe it, they can't even wrap their brain around that it could possibly be true. How could something that is in all of our foods, a part of our society, we celebrate our birthdays, our weddings, our holidays, everything, the sugar industry has written itself into our lives. So people just cannot wrap their brains around it. How can this actually be a drug? How can this be toxic? How can I be hurting my children?
Hollywood star Gloria Swanson inspired her husband William Duffy to write this controversial book about sugar.
Have you heard
Sugar Blues was the first strong personal testimony about the devastating impact of sugar on the human body. A close friend of theirs named John Lennon helped Sugar Blues become a bestseller, and the message got out. The population really started eating less sugar.
May I ask you, I would like to give this to Yoko Ono. Is it possible?
Sure. Go to the end of the building, make a right down the ramp, the 2 black doors.
So what happened in the last 40 years? That the message of Sugar Blues was almost completely forgotten, and sugar consumption began to steadily rise again?
Řeknu, aby tak já budu sladký věci a budete všechno muset dělat za mě.
No connection between sugar and any lifestyle diseases, experts say. No proof that sugar makes ADHS children. No damage, no caries, no diabetes, nothing.
Today's zeitgeist is sugar tolerant. It might add a few extra pounds of body weight, but it's not killing anyone, for God's sake.
Mama to chce, papa.
I've seen it 100 times. The calm child comes to the cafe and, after a good sugar doping, he turns into the devil.
Shocking things becomes a great way for you to be able to really keep track of how much sugar you're really putting into your system. And I know all of you are familiar to hearing things like, well, everything in moderation. Everything is cool and everything is healthy as long as it's moderation. Well, Moderation being the key to success. That's why we created something called Sugar Savvy. So 24 ounces, 24 grams in 24 hours. Do not forget for sugar shock, every 4 grams is a teaspoon. So this is the moderate amount. When you hear people say, oh, moderation is the key to success. This is what it looks like, 24 grams. Okay. Oh my goodness, Mommy, this can be, thank you for giving me Sunny D. It looks healthy. 100% vitamin C, okay? Here's the reality. Here's what's in Sunny D, okay? This is Sunny D, baby, okay? This is your happy, smiley, 28 teaspoons of sugar drink, okay? So, okay, Mountain Dew, okay, look at this. In Mountain Dew, 69 teaspoons of sugar. This is what's in Mountain Dew, okay? This is why a lot of times when you see people that have no teeth and terrible skin, this is why. This is why. Right here, sugar, okay? This is what's in a serving, which is 11.5 teaspoons. This is 1 serving of Mountain Dew. Remember this? This is the savvy amount in 24 hours. This is larger than that, which means technically, to be considered drinking sugar in moderation, you could have a half a glass of this and have absolutely no other sugar the rest of the day. We all know that's not realistic.
I love Peeps, right?
Oh, you can do it. You can do it.
I am related to the Peeps.
No, you are not related to the Peeps.
I look like one. Have you ever seen those special K bars?
Oh, yes, they're terrible.
Are
They're
they
candy
bad?
bars. If every once in a while you want to have something like that, I wouldn't say you can't do it, but I'm just hoping you're going to stop liking things like that. Energy Up is to get you to where I eat and drink anything I want. I want you to be able to eat and drink anything you want, but I want to help you change what you want.
It can't be true that the billions of women on the planet who eat a normal Western diet are all killer mothers who cause their children so many diseases from the time they're in the belly. It's crazy. So many people have sick children with allergies, Crohn's disease, autism, ADHD. If these sugar claims are only partly true, it's absolutely shocking. I want to go back home and hug my children.
Takhle rozkoukneš?
3,
2, 1, teď. Štěstí, zdraví, štěstí.
Jak si mít ty 2 kousky, jo?
There is a chance if we eat real food, our son's immune system will get better, and we decrease the chance of him having diabetes and brain diseases. But it's hard for us because our society is so completely hooked on sugar. My parents understood my sugar struggle when I was pregnant, but now they can't figure out why I still keep at it. For them, a pork feast without sweets is impossible. I agree. I see that the more we eat meat, the more we crave sweets. It's a vicious circle. The criticism doesn't bother me so far. We are slowly learning to live without sugar, white flour, meat, and dairy, and I already see some effects. The children aren't full of snot, my partner's skin has cleared up.
Padlo. Takhle to máš po těle. Nebo ty ne, ale já taky ne.
I'm just going to have to find my family some more illustrative examples.
This model of the heart and these tubings representing the 60,000 miles of our blood vessels. After doing over 5,000 coronary bypass operations, I'm sitting there looking at this heart in my hand. I'm saying this patient has a normal cholesterol. This patient doesn't have the risk factors that we associate with heart disease, and yet here he is on my table. And sometimes I would see them back 5 to 10 years later for a second operation, once again with a normal cholesterol. That led me to delve into what really was causing this problem so we could prevent it or cure it rather than just detour around the problem.
Heart surgeon Dwight Lundell has won many international medals since he started working out for the Ironman 6 years ago at the age of 65.
The cholesterol would never get stuck in the wall of this blood vessel if it wasn't for inflammation. So the question is, what's causing that inflammation? And the answer is high blood sugar. From all the sugar that we've been encouraged to eat in our diet, 60 to 70% of our calories from carbohydrates, which in our blood are converted to blood sugar. But when we get high sugars for a long time, our body just can't handle them. Now remember, everything we put in our mouth ends up in our blood vessels with elevated triglycerides and elevated cholesterols. It's all a function of the sugar and the carbohydrates we eat that's causing all of these problems that ends up giving us a heart attack and affecting our heart.
This will only hurt a little. So what he's doing now is chewing up the food so that it breaks it up into small pieces. He moves the food to the back of his throat, and then automatically it goes down the esophagus.
For years, he's been suffering from Lyme disease. Our parents think I'm trying to kill him with our crazy sugar diet. No one wants to hear that the opposite is true. Without our diet, he'd be much worse.
This is a big organ, digestive enzymes, and that does the heavy work of digesting, breaking carbohydrates down into simple sugar, big proteins down into little amino acids, big fats down into fatty acids, and those can be absorbed. People used to think that the brain in the head, up here, brain, I won't write there, brain in the head operates the body. About 90% of the information is actually going up from the enteric nervous system to the brain, and only a little bit is going down. And that was a shock to people. And years after it was found, it still was a shock to people. Very much as when Copernicus found that the planets revolved around the sun. The sun didn't revolve around the earth.
Now you can sign.
I can sign.
Thank you. Thank you.
A big advantage of a sugar-free diet is that sugar-free children are never picky about food, in spite of the fact that it takes us a while to develop a rich and colorful menu. Velen is almost 2 years old. We still don't know if his brain is okay. Sometimes I'm not sure. He's somehow different than his older siblings. Did my diabetes and sugar play some kind of role in it? I ask my family again and again not to offer the children sweets. But to them, I'm just crazy. Even more crazy than my sister's boyfriend. He would rather take insulin than cut down on his sugar consumption. Millions of people are willing to combine sugar addiction with insulin addiction for the rest of their lives. But I hope that's not my path.
I have a lot of personal experience with overconsumption of sugar because it caused me to have a very severe case of type 2 diabetes. To make a long story short, I tore the prescription up because I couldn't handle it, that it would have destroyed my liver in another 2 or 3 years. I completely reversed my diabetes, including the time it took to learn how to do this, in about 3.5 months. Basically, the cure is simple. Don't eat stuff that causes diabetes, and sugar is a principal cause of it. We used to eat about 2 pounds of sugar a year. Today, we eat 1 pound to 1.5 pounds of it a day. In some quarters, diabetes is known as a pre-cancer disease because it usually leads to cancer.
Thank you.
So far, I don't have cancer on my sugar blame list. But Thomas reminds me of an episode from our family's past. My mother's young cousin was dying of a brain tumor. He went through chemotherapy and surgery, and despite all the treatment and medicine to combat the cancer, the doctors said he had no chance of surviving. My aunt stole him from the hospital and started treating him on her own. She changed his diet. She completely excluded white sugar, white flour, meat, and milk products. Thanks to this new diet, he lived for 5 more years. It seemed like a miracle to everyone.
Mi dala babička.
A co to je?
Bombóny. A jmenujou se lamtilky.
A co s nimi uděláme?
Mami, já nevím. To s nimi uděláme.
I've just discovered something unbelievable. An answer to my sugar blues question. What happened 40 years ago that the anti-sugar crusaders suddenly disappeared and sugar consumption started to rise again? Like a proper director, I immediately start thinking of ways to make a blockbuster thriller that will open the eyes of the world. Investigative journalist Gary Taubes spent 3 years gathering facts about the crimes of the sugar industry.
Crucial acts was to use Fred Stair. So Fred Stair was the founder and head of the nutrition department at Harvard University. They had been giving him money for decades. Fred Stair and his experts put together this 100-plus page report, Sugar in the Diet of Man. Nowhere in the report does it say that the sugar industry has funded this document and funded these scientists and made this document happy, that it is in effect a piece of sugar industry public relations. While this is happening, the FDA can conclude that this substance is generally recognized as safe, and the document they rely on for their conclusions is Sugar in the Diet of Man. And once the FDA concluded that, they could broadcast it all across the country, all across the world, that sugar has been exonerated. And so one way to look at it is to think of it this way. Imagine it's a court case. It's a criminal trial, and the crime that's been committed is the killing of hundreds of thousands of people every year, millions of people every year by heart disease and diabetes and obesity. And sugar is the prime suspect, should be the prime suspect. It's taken into court.
It was a tremendous historic case of research being paid off by industry. A bit of 1970s marketing prowess that has changed the way the world looks now when we see sugar as an innocent pleasure.
Where Gloria Swanson, in that era, this is actually an antique little silk dress from that era, and this sweater is also from the 40s.
We're gonna try and get permission to get on the roof. Not sure this will happen, but we'll give it our best shot. Gloria Swanson would go ballistic, absolutely ballistic, anytime she saw anybody using sugar. They hated her and hated what she was speaking about, the danger of sugar.
somebody send Gloria Swanson a baby urn filled with sugar. Gloria Swanson was just way ahead of her time. And it just puts a smile on my face. Everybody needs to read Sugar Blues. It's as important today as it was 40, 50 years ago. I've always had urns full of white powder. Fortunately, when I used to do drugs, I had this amount of drugs around. Back then, my boyfriend was their drug dealer, and we had everything by the pound, by the urn, whatever we wanted. So...
Do you have children?
I do not, no. My children are the girls that I work with. I had a child when I was 17 years old, and I gave him up for adoption. So, no, I do not have a child.
With an urn full of white powder, the sugar thugs used a tried and true mafia tactic to send a clear warning. Watch out, Gloria. Sugar is our bread and butter. I need to know who those sugar bigwigs are today. In Germany, I find a new colleague. He's a food detective who can shine more light into the darker corners of the sugar industry. I'm not sure if our happiness is locked up in our refrigerators, but it seems to be like that. In sugar, we trust.
For me, it should be regulated very strongly what human beings are eating. Our government cares very carefully about the animals, but they do not care really about what we are eating. Especially for sugar, normally they take sugar inside the bread, but I don't know, I only want to eat bread. I don't want to eat sugar.
I'm not going to tell you all the stories, but there are a lot of stories about sugar. That was the start of my career. How much do you like sugar? So my colleagues and I, like Michelle Reisner, who will come on for a second. Michelle, why don't you come on? And Michelle and I worked with Cadbury, Schweppes, as well as with a lot of other companies. And they wanted to know what's the right amount of sugar and what's the right amount of other ingredients to reach the most light. That was called the bliss point.
Excuse me, where is your boxes of Equal? The blue sweetener? 8.
Should be aisle 8.
Okay, thanks so much. I'm telling them this is the best store around.
Thank you.
They're all really pretty much the same type of problem, which is how do you figure out the combination of ingredients that people will drink and continue to drink. Not drink once and then get dissatisfied and be full, but drink again and again and again. Give people the different combinations, ask the people how much they like it, and then build a mathematical model. You will find the bliss point each time. And that really helped this business. Kool-Aid on the one hand and Jell-O on the other. All our babies in the family. Sometimes we're the uncle and aunts of these, but we've touched many of them. This wonderful thing given by God to humanity. $2 billion alone in the pasta sauce business. $2 billion. 400 million in coffee, 400 million in Dr. Pepper, maybe $6 billion altogether, $7 billion. And all the result of doing basic science, applying it to business.
One of the results of our family research, if you want to eat sugar-free, you have to cook on a regular basis. And when you do, you will lose your clean cooker and gleaming kitchen.
This is a hell of a breakfast. What did you feed an army?
No. How can I make from this really a successful product?
What is it?
Oatmeal.
Is this oatmeal? Well, do what all the people do. This is Andrea's oatmeal. It's attractive if you like oatmeal. The real question is, take this product and make children love it. How will you do that, Michelle?
I'm going to add some color to make it fun looking. I'm going to add something to make it a little bit sweeter because they're not going to eat it, just steel oats.
Make that product not oatmeal. Make that sweet, make that tasty, make that colorful, make that fun.
Exactly.
Andrea's magic oatmeal. The oatmeal that children love.
Researchers have found evidence that the sugar that children love is actually dumbing them down. Scans showed brain changes in children with metabolic syndrome, including reduced volume in hippocampus. They have significantly lower academic performance in reading and arithmetic. So how can schools be safe places for education if they're wide open to peddlers of sugar? We are trying to highlight the issue of vending machines in schools, to actively push them to change their miserable meals and deal with the abnormal sugar intake of their pupils. But we see that the headmaster and even most parents don't understand our efforts. Our protest against the school vending machines fails. School meals remain poor in nutrition and rich in sugar levels. Despite our defeat, our children are getting more interested in the issue. They sink their creative energies into the cause.
Ať se ti podaří film o cukru a tady máš dárek.
Meanwhile, my relatives have continued with our regular cake meetings. They still can't figure out why I protect my children so. For them, candy, meat and sweets are a traditional part of childhood. Velen is almost 3 years old and he still doesn't talk yet. We joke about it, but actually I'm starting to worry about him. I'm going back to my friend Adalbert to find out how to protect children in a sugar-saturated society.
So let's get started. This class is peaceful desserts. There's no refined sugar. So, you stay at peace. You have no sugar crashes. So today we are doing carrot cake.
What's the secret of our success with our children and our grandchildren is that when they come from school, you want something. And if there is nothing, and other children get the sweets, then you only suppress. But our practice is never suppress, just give them better sweets. The sugars from whole grain, like a rice malt syrup and barley malt syrup, sometimes fruit juices, but that's more secondary intake.
We know more and more about cooking now. Our cuisine is colorful and full of flavor. We know how to make a balanced meal. Plant proteins, whole grains and vegetables are part of our everyday table. We learn how to cook quickly for less money. Sugar-free cooking is surprisingly much cheaper than the industry stuff. Our apartment is sugar-free, but everywhere else, there's junk food galore. When the food detective wants me to come to Germany to observe a court case with the company Rittersport, I agree. In the end, though, we are not allowed to enter the courtroom because the chocolate company doesn't want to speak publicly about their ingredients.
If we want to eat this kind of chocolate, we shall not know what kind of flavor is inside. Okay.
And so whatever the outcome of the court case, the production secret wins the day. Is there anyone who can take on the power of a production secret? I would certainly like to meet someone like that. And maybe even I should start lawyering up.
Well, the ones on the wall are the best ones. I collect old ads to show that companies are really engaging in the same tactics over the course of decades. So this ad from 1925 is for Post brand chocolate, and they're claiming that it's a safe candy for little folks, and it's healthy. The same company is basically marketing candy again, this time calling it cereal. You know, the tactics don't really change much over the years. The industry is very clever about sort of tinkering with ingredients. So you complain about one ingredient, no problem, they've got another one they can replace it with, but the product still remains pretty much the same. In the States, high fructose corn syrup has sort of become the ingredient du jour to hate. And so now we have the absurd situation of companies promoting their product with regular sugar. So that's why I'd really rather not focus too much on any one ingredient, keep the focus larger on processed food in general and get people to understand that we need to be eating real food. It doesn't come in a box.
Michelle Simon gives me a list of the sugar players who make the rules of the food ring. I spent months trying to contact or visit them.
We are not interested in participating in a film. We wish you luck with your project. National Sugar Organization.
A big part of public relations, though, is knowing when to keep quiet. How can my PR take on their PR?
Well, first of all, you need very good, hard-hitting campaign literature. You can get out on a street corner, for example, with a bullhorn, okay, and make a lot of noise about the dangers of sugar. Be able to explain to people the difference between a processed sugar and complex sugars. Sugar, whether it's a sugar cube, a teaspoon of sugar, or it's in what we call liquid sugar, like Coca-Cola, zero health. There is no health in drinking this liquid sugar or this processed sugar. It can have such a damaging effects on the body. You can go around a worldwide trip with this urn. This urn is full of sugar. Also, what you need strong campaign literature that explains to people who are pushing. Yes, show the people who are behind pushing the sugar. Show, for example, the CEO of Coca-Cola. He lies to people all of the time.
Well, in terms of education, I think it's important, really important, that parents understand a lot of this, like these statements. And I think this is a very effective poster which can educate parents so that the kids don't get addicted.
You see? That's basically, this is where your ashes go. So basically that's why you guys got the sugar in there, right? You eat sugar, this is where you're gonna end up.
I have great news. I have an important ambassador for our campaign.
Already in the state of California, we're paying up to $20 billion a year on these preventable diseases. So one of our public health solutions is by raising a penny per fluid ounce tax. We've been attacked in our promotion of this soda tax, saying it's nanny government. We're telling people how to lead their lives. But in reality, we're on an unlevel playing field. The industry is spending hundreds of millions of dollars. In the first 3 days of the year, the soda industry spends more on advertising than the US government spends the entire year on public health and prevention campaigns.
Sugar cane kill, sugar cane kill, sugar cane kill, sugar cane kill.
Perfect.
This happy moment is the end of our cooperation, though, unfortunately. The senator's assistants recommend he only support me personally rather than politically.
Big companies write our health curriculum, and it's a revolving door with all the different people that will work for food companies, and then they're actually writing our laws. Very proud of Michelle Obama and her Let's Move, but what are they taking on? Movement. They're taking on exercise, because Washington is afraid to take on the food industry. But the truth is, it's 80% food and 20% get your body moving.
Food industry is not guilty of causing us to overeat, and it's not guilty of pushing sugar into our bodies. We choose to do that because we like sweetness. But the food industry is not guilty. It's not like a drug purveyor. It's not like a person who hooks you on drugs. It's not fair to society. The food industry is mainly groups of people who are trying to produce good products at a fair price to feed people, with a desire, like any other business, to make a profit.
Billionaire New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg and his PR machine take on the sugar industry as well, to no avail. Perhaps the USA will never budge on its sugar consumption, but what about the wise old world?
When a food manufacturer, Nestlé for example, wants to bring a new sweetener onto the market, it conducts its own research to see whether the product is safe or not. They deliver this report to EFSA. EFSA then hires experts who read the reports and give advice to EU institutions about whether the product may be admitted onto the European market. So, how independent is EFSA?
So 1 week ago, EFSA scientists concluded that aspartame was safe. On 19 scientists, 12 have had industry links and 7 have worked with companies who sell aspartame-containing products. She was under a contract for Ajinomoto, who's the world-leading producer of aspartame. I mean, this is declared information. We have been working a lot on EFSA's independence over the past years. In October this year, we have published a report that showed that 59% of scientists on EFSA's panels had direct or indirect ties to industries whose activity comes under the remit of the agency. So it's really a lot. It's indefensibly too much. We were not expecting so much.
I can help you if you want.
Yeah, please. It will not take 1 year, but maybe 100. Maybe ask me again in 100 years. Compared with the smoking, the tobacco industry, it also took a very long time, maybe 40, 50 years. And now they have the real horrible warning. The topic of the World Health Assembly last year was non-communicable diseases. And I asked how much of the 35 million from non-communicable diseases are from smoking. From 35 million deaths a year, 14% is from smoking, and all the rest mostly is from sugar.
And why? Why it's...
Why 100 years, I mean, maybe 105, I don't know. This is the president. This is the most important researcher from German government. And he's the president of this most important governmental institute for food research in Germany. At the same time, he's working for this industry lobby group. You can see him here, Professor Gerhard Rechkemmer. And this is very funny. Coca-Cola is working together with Professor Rechkemmer, Max Rubin Institute, World Health Organization.
ILSI represents political influence, both in Brussels and in Washington.
How sweet is our love after 16 years together. On our annual holiday in Italy, the kids are disappointed that the traditional food market is gone. Our gourmet taste can only be gratified from the packaged selection at the supermarket now. The children are starting to understand what the long arm of the food industry is. They want to protest.
to moje asistentka je moje dcera. A abyste věděli, co se tady děje, tak připravuji atrakci Sugar Shock.
Food detective Hans highly recommends I visit an annual German adulation of sweetness. Every year, the confectionery Haribo entices children to bring chestnuts for the boars in the company forest. At the Christmas hunt, the managers will have pork steaks thanks to their loyal customers.
Ich mach, was geht, aber wenigstens einmal hier guten Tag gesagt habe.
Mach doch mal nicht
Respekt. Was?
Bisschen runter, mit dem kein Ding.
It's surprising, the sacrifices people are willing to make for a bag of candy. How difficult it must be for my children, queuing for hours to get a reward and then having to throw it out immediately.
Hello! Hello! Apples! Sweet apples! Do you want some? For 1 kilo apples, 1 kilo apples. What about apples? No? What? No? Sweet apples!
I love sugar.
Nein, wir haben Äpfel zu Hause.
You want?
The apples were not a success, so I'll just have to be more radical still.
Because the child are happy with sugar.
But it's very dangerous.
Stop your demonstration on this Haribo. Können Sie Deutsch?
No.
Aufhören zu filmen bitte mal gerade. Hören Sie bitte auf. Stop your film. No, no. Please stop it.
Okay.
We have to go.
Oh.
This is what you make, is demonstration.
The problem with the sugar and sugar consumption in the world is that it was always supported by the government and by the kings. Sugar mafia, it's not the same mafia like drug trafficking, because it's a legal mafia. They are working together with the government, with the authorities for hundreds of years. And all London is built on sugar. All the richness, all the palaces of the kings in several countries is founded on sugar.
The sugar cube was actually a Czech invention. And just as I am in the midst of waging my war on sweets, how does the country mark its EU presidency? By making the sugar cube its official symbol. There is a high number of politicians suffering from metabolic syndrome and diabetes. Type 2 diabetes in middle-aged individuals has consistently been associated with deficits in short-term memory, attention, executive functions, and cognitive efficiency. Could that explain why our politicians are so ineffective? Dear Mommy, I wish you were here. If I had a ship, I would sail to you and snuggle up with you.
We are seeing now the paradox in certain countries in the developing world that they go from malnutrition, meaning lack of calories, to overweight and obesity. This has to change because the cost of non-communicable disease for the community is actually unbearable. It's very difficult to accept that things can be prevented and people can be healthy and then people are not because of the interest of a few, maybe hundreds of people.
Můžeš se hezky uvalebit. Táto bude číst pohádku. Níhaj, můžeš.
Tak jdeme?
To jak chceš, si hajnu. Aby se ti trochu spínkalo. Tu nějakou, dobře.
In a tough time for my family, I'm sent far away from my sweethearts again. The local television has sent me to Africa to film Czech NGOs. One would think that in a refugee camp of all places, I could leave sugar behind for a while. But here I keep remembering Adalbert and his sweet fermented miracle.
You know what made me enthusiastic in marathon? That was Abebe Bikila. He was my hero. The secret was, in his case, and all the hundreds of world marathon runners from Kenya, Ethiopia, is sorghum. Because of poverty, they were mainly eating only sorghum, and they ferment. So complex sugars start to little decompose, and you can absorb very fast, what is ideal for top sport. He didn't have a sponsor, he didn't have a coach, he didn't have a physiotherapist, and he was smiling and won.
Next to the food aid dispensaries is a market. I see sugar on every stall. It looks like a medieval drug-dealing center. Not only in this refugee camp, but all over, Africans have traded the natural sweetener they use for thousands of years for sugar. Now an epidemic of diabetes, especially type 2, is rapidly growing throughout the continent. The cane industry is one of the worst land grabbers, taking the best fertile land. Africa is the new sugar tiger. In the refugee camp, the families are dependent on UN food deliveries, which come only once a month. It's strictly prohibited to exchange food for anything, but all the families do, trading US-made sorghum for cane sugar products. Malnourished, they end up in hospital, where NGOs give them emergency food aid.
Sugars, protein, vegetal.
Cooked flour, oil, or
probably
fat.
Refined flour, palm oil, saturated fat, vitamins and minerals. So from an analytical nutrition point of view, looks okay, and it is totally junk.
No, it really smells like a nut bar, like peanut butter with lots of sugar in it. It's incredible. This I find a crime. This I find criminal, to feed this to these poor children.
For really malnutrition children, it may help for a short while to not let them die, but you don't make strong children with it. You need whole grains, you need beans, vegetables, and if we could do that for Africa, then you would create independent children, independent people, instead of keeping them in a weak condition from all these refined sugar foods.
You can stop the hunger within 1 year if you want. If you stop the American, European way of nutrition. Because Africa itself is so rich, can be totally self-sufficient. But then we also have to be honest and say the multinationals has to be stopped to get the best soils. The locals, they have to continue to survive on very poor soil. And then they are malnourished, and then we come with our bad consciousness through the churches, and we create an NGO, and we dump this on the market for the poor blacks. Give me a break. Africa is so rich, they can export food if you give them back their land.
Velan still has a real problem with his speaking. Nobody can say if it's a brain problem, the stress of being in kindergarten, or his mother's long-term absences. I went on this quest to rescue my children, but now they're without a mother, and I'm off trying to rescue 2 billion others. There are about 346 million people with diabetes worldwide. For the pharmaceutical industry, insulin is more valuable than gold. It's an absolutely safe investment, much safer than trading on the stock exchange. And by 2030, the number of people with diabetes could be 552 million. It's a sweet economic outlook. I think 5 years of running around the world like mad has been enough. The world acts like it finally understands the sugar danger. What few people talked about before has become a real issue today. Some of my talking heads have become media stars. But nothing tangibly changes. The New York soda ban fails. The Danish sugar tax fails. The laws don't change, habits don't change. Junk is just replaced with bio-junk. Multinationals, scientists, and pharmaceuticals all do exactly what they did 40 years ago. Every product has to become sweeter for every generation, and more destructive than we ever realize. A sugar-free revolution doesn't kill anybody. It starts peacefully on every kitchen table. Imagine if we all stopped using sugar at once. The changes would be huge. Transport would be massively decreased, local food production would grow. The big pharmaceuticals would lose money because the number of ill people would drastically decline. Africa would be better able to heal poverty and hunger. Families would spend more time in their kitchens, they would have more time to speak together. The changes would be painful for some, but worth it for so many more. Wake the world up from the sugar blues.
That I'm going to sing to you. When you hear them, they will thrill you through and through. They're the sweetest blues you ever heard. Now listen and don't say a word. Sugar blues, everybody singing the sugar blues. The whole town is ringing, my loving man, sweet as can be, but the doggone food turns sour on me. I'm so unhappy, I feel so bad. I could lay me down and die.
O açúcar pode ser tão viciante como a cocaína.
What you choose, but I'm all confused. I've got the sweet, sweet sugar blues, more sugar. I've got the sweet, sweet sugar blues.
הורג יותר מפצצות. Sokeri tekee lapsistasi riiviöitä. Sugar, se ei ole smerti.
Sugar is poison.
El azúcar crea locura. Cukoröl puhditus ja murgotönt. 糖是你生命的强盗。Gula memusnahkan generasi muda kita.
I could lay me down and die. You can say what you choose, but I'm all confused. I've got the sweet, sweet sugar blues, more sugar. I've got the sweet, sweet sugar blues. Sugar blues. Everybody's singing the sugar blues. My loving man, sweet as can be, but the doggone fool turned sour on me. I'm so unhappy, feel so unhappy. I could lay me down and die. You can say what you choose, but I'm all confused. I've got the sweet, sweet sugar blues, more sugar. I've got the sweet sugar blues. You can say just what you choose, but I'm all confused. Oh, baby, got the sugar blues.